All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Dance Studio Network podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Chatham, and joining me today, the lovely, the kind, the gracious, the wonderful... Samantha. She's being humble. Samantha is an amazing person. We're going to dive into the story with you. For those who don't know your stories, your dance experiences, and what you're doing today. So really stoked to have you on the show, and let's just jump right into it. So, first of all, I've known you for what, 10 years?
About
10 years. So incredible story along the way, but let's wind it back to where it began. When did you start dancing?
Oh, I started dancing when I was probably about 4 years old.
Okay. And what style?
I think I started off with just very basic ballet, tap, jazz, just kind of like the pre-classes.
Classic foundation work.
Oh, yeah. Yes. And then once I went to a summer intensive at a ballet academy, I fell in love with ballet and made the switch to just do ballet.
Just do ballet.
Yeah.
Awesome. So how old were you at that age?
I must have been probably about 6 or 7.
6 or 7. So again, you just kind of fell into the deep end pretty fast.
Yeah, and my mom will tell you stories about how I came out of that intensive, and I was like, I'm doing that again.
I love it. Well, it's great because it's like that raw, unfiltered passion with the young prees kind of moving up to that age 7, and in our studios we see that raw energy, and it's like it needs to be shaped, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you dove in. So ballet was kind of the dream.
It was everything. I went to see a Nutcracker performance, and I stood up in the middle of the performance and told my mom, I will be doing that.
Okay.
And so they made the switch that summer leading up to it, and I kept with the academy for probably my whole elementary training.
Wow. That's awesome. What was that like for you? I mean, kind of going from, introductory to a little bit more committed.
It was everything.
I love it.
I'm one of those people that really thrive in the deep end.
Okay.
And so just kind of jumped head first and wanted to do as much as I could. And the teachers I had were phenomenal. I made great friends throughout. So
love it.
It was a lot of fun.
Well, and it's always interesting because, you've got the parent-student dynamic, and, something we always strive for is we want the students to fall in love, and then the work ethic follows. So explain a little bit of the dynamic. Did your parents have to kind of get you ready for class, or were you just itching to get there?
It was probably a give and take. I think I went to public school, and then I would go straight from public school. I'd have a snack after I got off the bus, and then right from then it was dance class. And I would do dance class until late in the evening. Mom would pick me up, and I'd have dinner in the car, get home, put my pajamas on, and go straight to bed.
I love it.
Yeah.
No, it is that dynamic, and that's why it's always fun. Is I always like to remind parents that I know you're doing the stressful part, but your students are receiving, your kids are receiving those core memories. So talking about eating in the car, and that's not a fun
right.
idea as an adult. You're we're rushing around trying to eat. But what's really cool is to see how that experience expands beyond the studio and the level of connection you get to have with your kids, both in studio and going to and from the studio, obviously.
Yes.
So I love it. So you got into ballet. You were pretty serious about it. What happened around maybe ages 10, 11?
When I was 10, 11, I had recently gotten point shoes. I was still training at the academy, and then I remember we went to a convention for the first time.
Oh.
And my world was even broadened more than it had been before. And I got to see what hip hop was, what jazz was, and I just was like, wow. There's so much more that I could do. And so from then we decided that we would find a studio that offered both ballet and the other styles.
Yeah.
And I auditioned for another studio and just
found the right fit.
Yeah, found the right fit and jumped right in again. And
well, and back in the day, you didn't have studios were very singular focused. So if you were a ballet studio, that's it. You didn't have any other thing else you could do, or vice versa.
Right.
So, I know that's a big, big part of the discovery process for every child. And It's neat to hear. So,
Yeah.
okay. Well, and I laugh because like if you've ever danced with Miss Samantha and ballet, I always love the faces when they're like, wait, you do hip hop? And it's like polarized opposite ends of the spectrum. And yeah, like it's there. And I remember the early years when you were teaching with us, oh my gosh, it was fun to watch kids' faces kind of like I'm trying to reconcile this, you know? Like,
right. They don't ever see the connection because they're so different on the outside. But once you get into them, you realize how much they have in common.
Yeah. Well, it's that thread, right?
Yep.
Like once you pull on that thread, the genres all kind of complement each other in the long run.
Oh, yeah.
And then depending on the goals, right?
Yep.
So working on point, talk a little bit about what that demand is for kids that are maybe at that pressing age where they're like, I want point shoes. And you're like, hey, you just started ballet. So help new parents, you know, like what's the process?
Yeah, it's definitely a process. That's a good way of saying it. I mean, the training honestly begins in those weekly classes.
Yeah.
The more classes they take, the stronger they get, the more they understand how their body works and how they should be feeling on their feet. And so I think just getting into your shoes, you don't ever want to jump the gun.
Yes.
Because as pretty as they are not comfortable.
And you have to be conditioned, you know?
Yeah, if you've got to be able to kind of quiet that voice in the back of your head going, this is painful, this doesn't feel good, I don't want to do this. And you have to really look at that end goal of, you may not want this in the moment, but what you want later down the road, you kind of got to go through it to get there.
Yeah, it's that kind of like that the discipline and a little bit of that pain you have to work through to condition your body to be used to it.
Yes.
Because that's not natural. Like, you know, no one walks around on point, like walking through the grocery store, you know, like to have the strength in the legs, in the feet, in the arms, in the everything all together. It's really, it's what makes it so special.
Yes.
Because not just anybody can do it, you know, just walking into it.
No, you have to
but
be a
anybody
good
who's
athlete.
committed to it, you can reach that level.
Easily.
Fair enough? Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, so now, so early teen years, you're doing ballet, you're doing jazz, you're doing hip hop. What was kind of some fun, memorable moments that stood out to you? Maybe productions you were part of. Like what kind of drew a heavier like demand on you?
What really kind of stuck out to me was obviously the Nutcracker performances.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to break this one down here. Okay, so first roll, Nutcracker, go.
Mouse.
Mouse. Second roll.
Oh my gosh. Probably a mouse again.
Mouse again.
I was small. I got to be a mouse a lot. Third roll, I was in Waltz of the Flowers.
Okay.
I've done Chinese.
Okay. Keep going.
Done. Party Girl was a really fun one.
Oh yeah.
Some studios have what they call the Lemonade Sea.
Oh.
And so just a different take on it. And I got to do that. That was fun.
Love it.
What else? Oh, I've done Merliton and Waltz of the Flowers and oh my goodness, so many.
So much.
And now I've been able to be a Mouse Queen and the Nutcracker.
Yeah. It's kind of like full circle, huh?
It is.
And obviously you have a little one who's dancing. What was that like to see?
Oh, it was magical.
Yeah. Kind of hits your heart differently,
It
huh?
does.
It's wild. I get to observe it, you know, like I always like to kind of like, you know, the bird's eye view of like watching how people interact and how, you know, what you grew up with and then what your kids get to have access to. It just hits differently.
It does.
You know, as a parent, you know, when you watch your kid discover something that you love, you're like, yes, you know, like it feels good. And then at the same time, you're like, oh my gosh, you got a lot of work ahead.
Right. You're like, oof, okay. We're in for it.
I'm seeing myself maybe in some areas. Yeah.
Oh, so many.
Very similar.
The good and the bad.
The good and the bad. I love it. Well, I think Nutcracker obviously is a big part of what we do within our studios, within our network. And it's really neat. You get a lot of kids for the first time coming in. So let's help some of those newbies. Like, what's some good advice for those that are getting their first role for the first time? What would you say to them?
When you get your first role, I would say just absorb as much as you can. A lot of times the rehearsals are long and the hours just kind of keep going.
Yeah.
But one of the things I love most about it is that every scene has varying ages and varying levels. And so as a young dancer coming into a production like that, your eyes are just absorbing everything that everyone's doing around you. And so the more you're there and the more you can just watch and be present, you just kind of grow.
Yeah.
I've seen many of our dancers who start their very first time, they come back to auditions the next year and like, oh, I also know this part.
Yeah.
And like just from watching, they're able to recall all the choreography. And it's just so enriching for them. And then being one of the ones who's older, if you're stepping in, they also get the opportunity to then build up the ones who are younger than them. And it's just really nice to see that kind of network of family oriented, just kind of building each other up. And
no, that's what it's all about. And, you know, that's the experience, you know, of the Nutcracker, that it's like life-giving, love affirming, you're building these bonds for life that you still remember to this day.
Oh yeah.
And now let me jump into the side question, because you got a lot of these kids are really anxious to get some roles that maybe they didn't get or haven't attained yet. What do you say to that mind? Because that's like people, they can feel that defeat, but they need to realize like there's a growth process of development. So what's some advice you give to those that maybe they didn't get the exact role they wanted?
Oh, it's so hard.
Yeah.
And I can remember being a kid and not getting the parts that I really wanted.
Yeah.
And my advice for you is just don't give up.
Yeah.
If it wasn't that role that year, that doesn't mean it won't ever be. And I would try to view it as a way for you to figure out what areas you could grow in, like really watch and observe and see what artistry those people are putting into that role, and then try to embody that throughout your training for that whole year after.
No, that's great. I mean, that's really what it takes, is to go, okay, at the end of the day, if I didn't get something, there's reasons I may not fully understand it, and they're kids. So they're not going to have all that, you know, grown up experience for, you know, years to come, but they're experiencing it for the first time.
Right.
So I love that. So don't take it personal that you're not good enough.
Yeah. Your teachers would never in a million years say you weren't good enough for it.
Yeah.
It was just not the right time.
Yeah. Or the right fit for the right, you know, that's from a production
casting.
style, like there's so many things. I mean,
so many.
We work countless hours of looking at every type of intentional movement that goes across the stage. And it's our job, right, to ensure a show is carried out and embodies the message that we're sharing.
Yes.
And for these kids learning this for the first time, it's like, well, I wanted to be on point. And you're like, oh, well, maybe you just got there and you're not quite at that confident stage to be able to carry that type of technique consistently for 4 shows, for several minutes on stage. And like, maybe you're just not ready for that just yet. But I love the whole, like, it's not a no, it's a not yet.
Right.
In dance, there really is nothing that will stop you if you remain committed.
Right. No one's ever going to tell you no. And if you didn't get a part or you didn't get to do something, that shouldn't stop you from trying.
Well, gosh, and you know, like we gotta represent here. Like, this is a specialty in art form. You know, we want kids to get those roles. We really want them to hit that mark the first time. But I mean, unless someone else has had a perfect life where you hit the mark on everything you've ever done and everything you've attempted, you know, part of failing is kind of that like fail forward method.
Yes.
Where, you know, if you didn't win, then learn.
Right.
If you didn't, you know, get it, then look at yourself and go, okay, how can I improve?
Exactly. And it's just an experience.
Yeah.
Whether it was a good experience or a bad experience, there's always something that you can take from it. And I think that's probably one of the most important things about the audition process or a casting process is that it's just the experience.
Well, and again, it's teaching these kids to have like a fortitude within their mind that, you know, if you don't get set outcome, it doesn't change the value of who you are.
Right.
And when you grow up into adulthood, people are going to do a lot harder things around. You're going to experience some tough situations, and you still have to be strong in knowing what your value and what it is that you offer to others. And so, you know, I see a little bit of softness in this next generation that, like, you know, it is. Every parent wants to kind of mow down the obstacles for their children, but this is the time for them to fail, where it's safe to have support, affirmation, like, come on, honey, like, you got this. Get up, let's go. Yep. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Get to work, get in the studio, get in your ballet class and show them, like, what you're made of. And
exactly.
Like, and we want to make sure that we continue that process, because that's some of the most demanding aspect that you have to have as a dancer.
Yes.
So,
That
oh my
tough
gosh.
skin.
Yeah, tough skin. And, childhood is time for learning, growing, failing, moving forward. And I've always seen what I love, like the kids who've, started light, and it's kind of like that curve. When it starts to go up, all of a sudden you get that like leap year of growth. And then they're like, yeah, I put in the last 4 years of work to get here. I didn't just,
Yeah.
walk on in and take everything I wanted. And
Yep. Didn't wake up one day and
Yeah.
go, yep, I'm amazing.
I love it. Oh my gosh, so good.
Yeah.
Well, any other advice for, I guess, kind of the Nutcracker experience for parents or students?
I guess for students, I would just say make sure you get enough sleep and
Love it.
hydrate. And then for the parents, I think the more you can support them and just be there, let them express themselves. I know it can be very stressful, and
Yeah.
as dancers, we tend to take it all on ourselves or feel like it was our mistake that stuff
Yeah.
didn't happen the way we wanted to in rehearsals or whatever goes on. But knowing that they have that safe space to fall back to,
Yeah.
that means everything.
That's great. Well, again, great dancers come from great support in their life, both in the studio and from the home life. And you as a parent can't dance for your kid, but you can encourage them. You can affirm them. You can love them and remind them the support that they have all around. And the dance community is special. It really is such a connected, of all the things that I've done in life, and I'm sure for you as well, like there's nothing more tighter than a dance community.
Oh, nothing.
No, I love it. Well, let's pause there. This is part one of, chatting with Miss Samantha. I'd love to dive into the next topic, kind of, the adulthood and the teaching side now of moving from student to teacher. So stick with us for our next episode with Miss Samantha. Thanks for popping by today. And again, I'm your host, Jonathan Chatham. I'll see you next week on this Dance Studio Network podcast. Till then.